Picture this: a kitchen in Shanghai. A 7-year-old boy is struggling with a math problem. He's been at it for 20 minutes. His pencil snaps from pressing too hard. He drops his head into his hands. And his mother, sitting right across the table, doesn't reach over. She doesn't explain the solution. She doesn't say, "It's okay, let's do it together." She pours him a glass of water, sets it beside him quietly, and goes back to her book. 10 minutes later, the boy looks up. He solved it. And the way he smiles, it isn't the smile of someone who got lucky. It's the smile of someone who knows now what they're capable of. That moment wasn't accidental. That was the result of a parenting philosophy so old, so deliberate, and so profoundly misunderstood in the West that most people who see it call it harsh. But here's what the data actually shows. Chinese children consistently rank among the highest performers in global education studies. They demonstrate extraordinary levels of perseverance, self-motivation, and academic drive that persist well into adulthood. And it all comes down to 3 ideas that most Western parents have never encountered. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will never look at your child's potential the same way again. Now, I know what some of you are already thinking. This is going to be about pressure, tiger moms, strict rules, and impossible expectations. And I want to address that directly, because that picture is not only incomplete, it's wrong. The research on Chinese parenting is far more nuanced than the headlines suggest. Psychologists at the University of Michigan and Columbia University have spent years studying what actually drives outcomes in children raised in Chinese households. And what they found wasn't fear. What they found was a set of deeply held beliefs about human potential, about the purpose of effort, and about the relationship between a parent and a child. Beliefs so different from the Western default that they look like pressure from the outside, but feel like love from within. This isn't about adopting a culture. It's about understanding something true about how human beings grow. The first concept is called Jiāo. Jiāo. It's often translated as education or teaching, but that translation misses the full weight of the word. In Mandarin, Jiāo carries the meaning of shaping a person from the inside. Not instructing them, not informing them, shaping them. In Chinese parenting philosophy, a child is not born complete. They are born with potential, and it is the sacred responsibility of the parent to take that potential seriously. Here's where this gets important. Western parenting has quietly adopted a belief that children should be allowed to find their own path, that forcing effort in any particular direction risks crushing their spirit. But Chinese parenting philosophy says the opposite. Protecting a child from difficulty doesn't preserve their spirit. It starves it. The child who is never pushed discovers very little about what they're capable of. The child who is consistently expected to try, and to try harder when they fail, builds something that no praise can give them. They build a relationship with their own capability. Here's how this shows up practically. Chinese parents don't ask their children if they feel like doing their homework. They don't offer screen time as a reward for practice. They operate from a quiet assumption that effort is not optional. And that assumption, consistently held, becomes the atmosphere a child breathes. After a while, the child stops waiting to feel motivated. They simply begin. That shift, from motivation-dependent to habit-driven, is one of the most powerful things a parent can cultivate in a child. And it starts not with punishment, not with fear, but with expectation. Steady, calm, unwavering expectation. But here's the part that surprises most people. Jiāo is not cold. Chinese parenting philosophy doesn't separate high expectations from deep warmth. It holds them together because it believes they belong together. A parent who expects little of a child is not a kind parent in this framework. A parent who takes their child's potential seriously, who refuses to let them settle, that is the deepest expression of care. There's a phrase used in many Chinese households. Chī Kǔ, Chī Kǔ. Literally, it means to eat bitterness. To be willing to swallow hard things, difficulty, failure, frustration, not as exceptions to a good life, but as ingredients in one. Children raised with this philosophy don't develop an allergic reaction to challenge. They develop a tolerance for it. And tolerance for challenge, as anyone who has studied performance at the highest level will tell you, is one of the most accurate predictors of long-term success that exists. The second concept is called Guān. Guān. It is translated usually as to control or to manage. And that translation is where almost all of the misunderstanding begins. Because in Western ears, the word control sounds like restriction. It sounds like surveillance. It sounds like the absence of freedom. But in Chinese parenting philosophy, Guān doesn't mean control in the sense of domination. It means to govern lovingly, to care enough to stay involved. Think about it this way. When a Chinese parent says, "I am Guāning my child," what they mean is closer to this. I am paying attention. I am not checked out. I am present in this child's formation. Researchers at the University of Texas studied what they called parental involvement across cultures, and what they found was striking. Children with highly involved parents, parents who monitored schoolwork, who knew their teachers' names, who asked questions at the dinner table, those children consistently outperformed their peers. Not because of pressure, because of presence. Guān is the antidote to what child development researchers call the invisible child syndrome. The child whose parents are physically present but emotionally absent. The child who figures out from a very young age that their struggles don't register. That child doesn't become independent. They become alone. And there is a profound difference between the two. Here's where Guān gets practical. A parent practicing Guān is not hovering. They are not checking work and correcting every answer. They are simply, consistently, reliably present. They eat dinner together and ask questions that require real answers. Not, "How was school?" but, "What was the hardest thing you did today? What did you do when it got hard?" They know what their child is working on, and they treat it as important, because they believe it is. They don't pretend that a child's education is solely the school's job. They understand that they are participants in it. And here's what that does for a child. When a child knows that their parent is paying attention, that their effort matters to someone beyond themselves, their relationship to that effort changes. They are not studying in a vacuum. They are contributing to something. To a family narrative, to a parent's belief in them. That is not pressure. That is a reason. And children who have a reason to work hard, not fear of consequences, but a genuine reason, work in a completely different way. The third concept is the one that brings everything together. It is called Miànzi. Miànzi. Loosely translated, it means face. The social standing and dignity that belongs not just to an individual, but to a family. Now, before you assume this is about shame, stay with me. Because the way Miànzi functions in Chinese parenting is far more sophisticated than it's given credit for. In Chinese family culture, the child does not exist in isolation. They exist as part of a unit. What they do reflects on the family. What the family does reflects on them. This is not a burden. It is a belonging. When a child understands that they are part of something larger than themselves, that their choices ripple outward, that the people around them have a stake in who they become, something changes in how they see themselves. They stop being just a kid trying to get through a difficult week. They become a member of something with a history and a future. And that identity, the identity of being a contributor, a representative, a person who matters to a lineage, is one of the most powerful motivators that child psychology has ever identified. Harvard researchers studying academic motivation found that children who had a strong sense of family identity, who understood themselves as connected to a story larger than their own, showed significantly higher levels of persistence, resilience, and self-directed effort than children who had no such anchor. This is what Miànzi provides, at its best. Not shame, not fear of humiliation, but the motivation that comes from belonging to something worth protecting. Now, here's the synthesis. These three ideas, Jiāo, Guān, and Miànzi, are not independent strategies. They are three sides of the same philosophy. A philosophy that says, a child is not a project to be managed. A child is a person in formation, and the people around them are responsible for taking that formation seriously. Jiāo says, I believe in your potential so much that I will not let you avoid difficulty. Guān says, I am here. I am paying attention. Your growth is not invisible to me. Miànzi says, you belong to something. You are not alone. What you become matters to more than just you. When those three things are present, when a child feels simultaneously challenged, seen, and connected, something remarkable happens. They stop needing external motivation. They develop what psychologists call intrinsic drive. The desire to grow that comes not from reward or punishment, but from inside. And intrinsic drive, once established, is extraordinarily durable. It doesn't disappear when the reward goes away. It doesn't collapse when the consequence is removed. It stays, because it belongs to the child. Now, I want to address something directly, because I know some of you are thinking about the darker side of what you've heard about Chinese parenting. The perfectionism, the anxiety, the children who burn out, those stories are real, and they matter. But here's what the research shows when you look carefully. The outcomes that concern us, the anxiety, the fear of failure, the emotional fragility under pressure, those don't come from high expectations. They come from high expectations without warmth, from Guān without connection, from Miànzi without belonging. The philosophy, practiced well, holds challenge and love together. It says, I push you because I love you. I stay involved because I believe in you. You belong to this family, and this family believes in your capability. That combination, high expectation plus deep security, is what the research points to again and again as the foundation for children who are not just high-achieving, but genuinely resilient. Children who can fail without fracturing. Children who can struggle without crumbling. Children who know that hard things are not signs that something is wrong. They are signs that something important is happening. So here's what I want you to take from this. You don't need to overhaul your entire household. You don't need to eliminate screens overnight or transform dinner into a formal examination. Start with one question. Tonight at the dinner table, instead of asking how school was, ask, what was the hardest thing you tried today? Not to evaluate the answer, not to solve the problem, just to signal to your child, I'm paying attention. Your effort is visible to me, and I think it matters. Do that consistently. Then, over the next few weeks, raise the expectation for one small thing. Maybe it's a daily habit, reading for 20 minutes, practicing something they find difficult. No reward, no punishment, just quiet, steady expectation. And hold it. Watch what happens when a child grows up inside the belief that they are capable. Watch what happens when they know someone is paying attention. Watch what happens when they understand they belong to something worth being proud of. Jiāo, Guān, Miànzi. Potential taken seriously. Presence that sees. Connection that motivates. These aren't borrowed cultural rules. They're principles built on how human beings actually develop. And they're available to you right now, starting with your very next moment as a parent. If this gave you something useful, share it with someone raising a child who deserves to know what they're capable of. And if you want to keep exploring what the world's most thoughtful cultures know about raising children who thrive, subscribe. There is so much more to come. Script length: approximately 10 minutes at conversational speaking pace. Approximately 1,300 words per 10 minutes.